On the 9th of August 2014, a young African-American man named Michael Brown was shot in Ferguson, a suburb of St. Louis, Missouri. Brown, who was just 18 years old, was shot 6 times in the chest, even though he was unarmed. The officer responsible for Michael Brown's death is Darren Wilson, a white policeman. The night after Michael Brown's death, a police officer was seen letting his police dog urinate on Michael Brown's memorial, which sparked anger throughout the crowds who had come together to mourn his life. Each day after, protests started out peacefully, as Ferguson citizens aimed to put an end to racial violence in their city. However, these protests eventually transformed into riots that brought about police force, tear gas, looting and violence. A protest that had initially begun to put an end to unwarranted police violence towards black citizens quickly pitted helpless citizens against the police force that had shown itself to be so unjust. This is our media item. We sourced our image from Getty Images. However, throughout the riots, this image was circulated across news stations and social media platforms. Our image is significant because it reveals how people are using social media elements such as the hashtag to generate awareness within these riot situations. The image also shows the personal suffering experienced by the community during this time. Throughout this video, we will be exploring the definition of a riot, Twitter's involvement in the Ferguson riots as seen in the media item, and 2 main riot theories, including the causation theory and the conflict theory.
A riot is defined as being a violent disturbance of the peace by a crowd, an uproar, or an outburst of uncontrollable feelings. A riot is typically a violent protest or gathering that has been caused by aggression or inequality between groups. In the case of the Ferguson riots and many other riots, the police or law enforcement are often one of these groups.
There are a number of possible causes of violence in relation to H.J. Snyder's work on the criminology of riots. He looks into a range of research on collective violence and causation theories that in many ways relate to the motivations behind the Ferguson riots. Riots seem rational from the point of view of the participants, as seen in our media item, where rioters have gathered to protest their cause. However, they are often perceived with a significant lack of understanding, and therefore those involved can be seen as senseless in the eyes of authority. Generally, riots occur irregularly, yet when they do happen, they often arise from various causes or a variety of socio-structural reasons and spread epidemically. The sudden outbreak of the Ferguson riots reveals this irregularity and need for socio-structural realignment within the society. Schneider's research looks at studies by Graham Newman regarding different types of riots. He outlines Newman's work, which looks into instrumental riots, which are planned rationally for a certain purpose and have socio-structural cause. Also expressive riots, that are characterised by outward expression, so therefore reveal feelings and attitudes of the individual or group. There are also interim riots, which are out of instrumental expressive causes, and also issueless riots, with no socio-structural causes at all. In addition to this, there are a number of studies into the collective violence aspects of riots. Research by Gustave Le Bon states how the collective state of a riot activates a herd instinct in the individual that reveals an animalistic pre-human state. Sigmund Freud points out how the irresponsibility and influenceability of a crowd during a riot reveals the predominance of the subconscious. Carl Jaspers outlines the factors of impulsiveness, suggestibility, intolerance, and instability of the individual when in these collective situations. Collective aspects of a riot are highlighted within our media item, as the group pictured are influenced by each other's actions. Finally, there is significant mention to 3 riot causation theories, which give a complex and intricate focus on the psychological, sociological, and social psychological factors within riots, even though the topic of riots is dynamic and difficult to judge. These causation theories include the criminal biological regression theory, where aggression instinct is shown through animal behaviour. Although it is clear that aspects of violence and aggression are present within the Ferguson riots, implying that these aggravated citizens take on animalistic tendencies is invalid. There's also the psychoanalytic social contagion theory, where people are carried away by their subconscious feelings, effects, or instincts. This theory is visible through our media item, as feelings of anger and betrayal are revealed through the facial expression of the main participant. Finally, the psychopathological convergence theory, where members of a group share similar characteristics or abnormal personal traits or attitudes they gather in the riot situation. The feelings of injustice and inequality shared amongst the African American community in Ferguson are expressed collectively as they communicate their motives. In today's social media age, with 288 million active users on Twitter and 500 million tweets sent out per day, the platform creates an environment of constantly fragmented updates. An awareness system used during different crisis situations to inform the public on these current events. One aspect that is unique to modern riots is the use of social media in organising and advertising them. The Ferguson riots especially stand out in the ways of social media usage. The 2014 riots brought about worldwide attention and international social media recognition. Although the Ferguson riots were not the first to utilise social media, they are one of the growing numbers of examples to send political messages through hashtags and citizen journalism. As can be seen in the diagram, these are the connecting hashtags taken from Twitter in August 2014. The Ferguson riots stormed through social medias like Twitter, Facebook and Tumblr last year, mainly with the use of hashtags. A number of popular and identifiable hashtags were generated by both victims of the riots and supporters, which allowed a reach out of public support as well as communicating the events of Ferguson.
As pictured in our media item, we are focusing on the hashtag Justice for Mike Brown. Rioters use hashtags on protest signs, knowing that photographs of the riot scenes will be circulated throughout the media and generate awareness and support for their cause. However, it must be noted that one single hashtag cannot be held accountable for the success of Ferguson's media campaign, rather a combination of hashtags to combine stories and motives. These social media tools can even enable them to circumvent local law enforcement systems and organise cross-border political protests or riots, say the authors of Web-Based Public Diplomacy, as the protests were seen to carry on throughout the United States, appearing in New York City and Washington DC, among other cities, during December of last year. The police reaction to the riots was so severe it led to a full media blackout, where journalists were shot with rubber bullets and tear gassed. Officers were also seen taking cameras from photojournalists and dismantling equipment of those trying to report the scene. While the police chief denied there being any suppression of the media throughout the riots, President Obama released a statement accusing the Ferguson police of violating the First Amendment.
Looting. There's also no excuse for police to use excessive force against peaceful protests, or to throw protesters in jail for lawfully exercising their First Amendment rights. And here in the United States of America, police should not be bullying or arresting journalists who are just trying to do their jobs and report to the American people on what they see on the ground.
This attempt at censoring the media within the riots highlights the importance of social media and the submergence of citizen journalism. Citizen journalism refers to the gathering and posting of first-hand information by the public, usually with the use of the internet and social media. The Twitter effect, explored by Nicola Bruno, outlines how Twitter provides coverage through the news gathering of user-generated content, without the need for reporters on the ground. Throughout the months of Ferguson's unrest, and even still to this day, social media sites like Twitter, Facebook and Tumblr keep the world informed of the events unfolding throughout the city, as well as connecting supporters with Ferguson's citizens. Digital network technologies have become an increasingly prominent weapon for protesters and riots, and it is with these technologies that the story of Ferguson was able to reach the screens of people across the globe. In The Nature of Riots by Robert Smith, A number of theories surrounding riots are discussed in relation to the Los Angeles riots of 1992. According to Smith, most of these theories are ineffective in describing a variety of riots. However, he does point out the structural strain theory, which very closely links to Ferguson's riots. The structural strain theory emerged in 1975 and states that when an individual experiences discontent or unrest towards a social matter, their desire to function normally within society dissolves and the pressure to resolve the matter takes over. The structural strain theory differs to many other leading theories of rioting, as it believes that rioters have the same basic values as the community, however, they are willing to be active in their pursuit for success. This differs vastly to the popular riffraff theory devised by the US Riot Committee of 1966, which believes riots to be a direct result of individuals with violent and criminal tendencies. Similarly, Karl Marx's conflict theory sees society to be built on social inequalities and differences, which is said to generate conflict in an attempt to bring about change. The conflict theory uses factors such as class, race, ethnicity, and gender to link certain populations to an unequal distribution of money, power, and social prestige. This is identifiable throughout the majority of riots, as they are often sparked by an act of injustice towards a group of people. In the case of the Ferguson riots, an inequality present between races in Ferguson had created an already unstable social climate. The shooting of Mike Brown highlighted the powerlessness of the lower classes and caused them to riot in an attempt to change their position. As seen through our media item, where the African American community has come together to protest their support for justice and equality. For centuries, race has been at the core of inequality and conflict throughout the world. According to Ted Robert Gurr, a failure to resolve fundamental demands for equality between races in the United States will lead to an incline in mass rebellion and riot in the future. He also explains that American society can often see group conflict and violence as part of national traditions, due to the struggles of racism being battled over generations. This is incredibly relevant to our media item showcasing the Ferguson riots, a violence flamed by the injustices between race and class. While racism is gradually reducing in the United States, it is still very present in some areas. Protest and rioting is an almost traditional way that this issue has been dealt with and will continue to be used as long as inequality is present within society.
From the analysis of our media item and additional research into the theories explored throughout this video, we have come to the conclusion that riots are often a necessary means of social change. It is clear, due to a combination of these theories, that emotion is still a very dominant human quality and motivation for riots. Shared characteristics and attitudes seed this collective action and ultimately reflect inequality's power to promote change. It is important we continue to study riots and their causes into the future, as social media platforms such as Twitter are altering the way that societies interact and information is gathered and shared.
Killing people dying, children hurt and you hear them crying. When you practice what you preach and what you turn the other cheek, Father, Father.